welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for subscribing. For all of you that have, if you have not subscribed, feel free to do so. My name is Sam and I'll be posting a lot more about my journey to medical school. I wanted to make a video on interviews. I know I got a couple of questions asked about what schools I've interviewed at and what are some common interview questions. So I wanted to make a whole video all about interviews. So to start off, I've interviewed at 4 schools. I interviewed at the University of South Carolina, Greenville in Greenville, South Carolina. I interviewed at John C. Edwards School of Medicine at Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia. I interviewed at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley School of Medicine in Edinburgh, Texas. I also interviewed at Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine at Seton Hall University. And I have an upcoming interview at the Robert Wood Johnson School of Medicine at Rutgers University. Well, I just want to get started by kind of like breaking down my interview days at these prospective universities by starting off with my first one, Greenville, which was my first interview. Therefore, I didn't really know what to expect, and I was doing some prep work and rereading my applications the day before and whatnot, just to be in the right mindset for the interview. And I mean, to start off the day, that interview started around 9 a.m. and it went on until 4 or 5 p.m. if I remember correctly. They had 2 traditional interviews, which were open, meaning that the interviewers were faculty and some students too that sat on the admissions committee, and they had access to your application beforehand. So anything on your application was free game to ask. They also had the MMI, the multiple mini interview, in which you basically go through, I think 5 or 6 stations. They each last from anywhere between 5 to 8 minutes. And it's similar to the Casper exam that some schools require for medical school, which aims to get at character and like humanistic traits for medical students, which some people characterize as soft people skills, but I wouldn't say they're soft skills. I think they're more of common sense and just being a genuine human individual, but it's not as common sense for others. So yeah, so I really enjoyed that interview, and they had some students interview as well in one of my traditional interviews. And they also gave us lunch, which is pretty good. And there was a tour of the campus, the library, the anatomy lab. It was great. My second interview was at John C. Edwards School of Medicine. That interview day started early at around 7:30 in the morning, and they gave us breakfast. It was followed by 2 traditional interviews in which the interviewers had access to our full application. And then we also had a student panel to tell us all about the School of Medicine. And that one was a short day. We ended up leaving at around noon, so it was only a half day. And that was also a successful interview. And my third interview was at UTRGV. I have my notes down here. UTRGV at Edinburgh, Texas. And that day started off around 8:30 in the morning. We were also provided breakfast. And we had 2 traditional interviews, but one of them was open and the other one was blind. So one of our interviewers had access to our full application, and the second interviewer did not know any of our stats or anything from our application. They kind of just wanted you to sit there and talk to them and tell them about yourself because they know nothing about you. So I thought that was an interesting concept as well. But both those interviews went well. We also had a student panel, and we had somebody talk to us about the history of the valley, the diversity of being in such a region in Texas, and also had a financial aid station. So that one would also let out around 4 p.m. My fourth interview was at Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine at Seton Hall University. That interview had 2 components. There was a video conference call and an in-person interview. The video conference call happened the week before my actual in-person interview. And what was interesting was that the interviewer didn't have a recollection of my GPA or my MCAT score. So they were blind to my numeric metrics, but they had access to the rest of my application. And so that was about a 30 or 40 minute video conference call. And then my in-person interview started at around 10 a.m. We had a traditional interview there with somebody who knew my stats and read my application. We also had a student panel with current medical students. There was a financial aid session. There was a curriculum and like history of Jersey and whatnot. And that day also concluded around 4 to 5 p.m. They did provide us lunch. I'm food motivated, I don't know. And then I have a 5th interview coming up at the Robert Wood Johnson School of Medicine in Rutgers University. And I mean, I can't tell you how that one went because it's not till March, so stay tuned. Now I just want to talk about a couple of the common questions that came up all throughout my interview process. Some things to be mindful of are knowing whether the interviews are blind or open. That being said, the open interviews, anything on your application is fair game. They can ask for you to elaborate on anything, or any detail that you put on there, you should be able and be prepared to talk about it with the interviewer. And if the interviewer is blind, then you have to be able to summarize and tell your interviewer about yourself within those 30 minutes and convince them that you are a great fit for the medical school. Every interview starts off with, well, I think all of my interviews started off with, tell me a little bit about yourself. Even though they've read everything and whatnot, they still want you to. How do you speak about yourself? So tell me a little bit about yourself. Why do you want to be a physician also comes up as well. Why do you want to apply to this medical school? Which I'm glad that I know my reasons for why applying to each of those schools, but I didn't think it was going to come up as often as it did, which I guess is intuitive, but I was surprised that it came up a lot. Another question that comes up a lot is some of those fill in the blank. Tell me about a time when, I don't know, you received constructive feedback from your team members. Tell me about a time when you failed. Tell me about a time when things didn't go the way you wanted. Tell me about a time when you had to act with integrity. Tell me about a time when you missed a deadline. Tell me about a time when your teammates weren't getting along and you had to be the arbitrator and decide tasks. A lot of interviewers also ask about, what do you do for fun? What are some of your hobbies outside of school? What do you do? What do you enjoy doing? And that really gets into, they want to know you as a person and less than just, I'm here to study and all I care about is school. Because although school is important and prioritizing your studies is good, they also want to know that you're a human and a genuine individual that enjoys to do things outside of school. Who doesn't? Another question that came up was explaining your leadership style, or how do you approach challenging tasks? Another question that came up throughout all of my interviews was, tell us about your academic struggles. So I have not shied away from the fact that I am not a perfect applicant. I had my academic struggles and I had a couple of C's on my transcripts. I even had a D in physics. At the end of the day, all these schools know your metrics. They've seen your GPA, they saw your C's, your D's, F's, whatever it is that you have submitted. But you're at the interview for a reason, right? So you just have to be upfront and honest and kind of explain to them what it was that prevented you from studying effectively, or why it was that you struggled. Just being honest and having a genuine conversation. I think a thing that worked in my favor was that I was able to talk about my upward trajectory. I started off, my first 2 years of college were pretty rough, but I was able to pick my grades back up and show this commitment in my academics that lacked my first 2 years of college. So just be prepared to tell them about your struggles and explain, your bumps along the road, that's normal. And they also asked about my MCAT, which my MCAT was also not stellar. Figure me that. But so just they asked about, what did you do to study? What materials did you use to prep? How much time did you devote to it? If you had to do it again, would you study differently? What would you change? Stuff like that. Another question that came up during 2 of my interviews was, if you did not get into medical school this cycle, would you try again next cycle? If so, what would you do differently? And I don't know why that question took me aback, but I guess it's because, you're at this interview and you're ready to put your best foot forward. You're confident and trying to let these medical schools know that, you mean business and you will be a great fit for their school. And then they just kind of tell you so what if it doesn't happen? Which at the end of the day, that's a very large possibility that might not happen because, medical admissions to medical schools are at an all-time low. So I think it took me for a loop, but then I also just took a step back and said, well, you know what, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So if I don't get into medical school, then I will try again next year. I know I want to be a physician, so it's a long-term goal of mine. So I will try again. I will obviously retake my MCAT because my MCAT wasn't stellar. I will do this differently, study differently, you know, keep using my time productively during my extracurriculars, continue my volunteering, this and that, to make me a better applicant for next cycle. And that was very well received. I think that kind of just makes sense. I mean, it's not like I'm not being genuine. That's exactly what I would do if I didn't get in, which isn't the case because I have 2 acceptances, so blessed. And at the end, every interview ends with, do you have any questions for me? Or do you have any questions about the school, the curriculum, anything else that, you know, you saw on the website that you want to ask about? And it's always smart for you to go in with at least 1 or 2 questions that you want clarification on. First, to let the interviewer know that you're engaged with what they're sharing with you, and also to let them know that you've actually spent some time thinking about that medical school and like researched their website and whatnot. Don't ask questions that can be answered on the website because then that doesn't look good either, but just show that you're engaged and that you genuinely care about the school. So far that sums up my interview process. I will make sure to tune back in about my Rutgers interview when it happens in March. So feel free to thumbs up if you like this content, leave a comment if you have any other questions, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so, or share my content with somebody else who you think might find this helpful. Side note, thank you so much for all of your support. I have a little bit over 80 subscribers, and I just wanted to re-emphasize that this channel is for you all. I am so happy that people are engaging in the comments and asking me questions because I want to share more about my cycle to make it easier for any other students interested in applying. So again, thank you so much for all of your support, and stay tuned for my video next week.